Hello there. I'm the real-life fake wizard. Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey opened on July 17th, 2026 to about $125 million domestic in 3 days, a 95% critic score, a 97% audience score, and an A cinema score. It is the largest live-action opening of the year so far, until Spider-Man Brand New Day drops in a few days. By every measurement available to me at present time, Nolan's Odyssey is a massive success, and I want to put that on the record before we get started because it's important. Christopher Nolan's Odyssey is a lesson in hypocrisy. And now I need to define what I'm talking about, so give me a second here. I see you in the comments. This video is not about any one YouTuber's commentary. It's not about the actual beat-for-beat plot of the film. This isn't a review video, and I'm not interested in box office results as a means of calling it a success or failure per se. The conversation surrounding The Odyssey is hardly about the movie, The Odyssey itself. It's not really about Nolan. It's not about numbers. If you dig in deeper to what's really at play here, you're seeing people battling over larger ideological ideas that were, perhaps, injected on top of or into this movie. The controversies began with the marketing material surrounding the film and the access media interviews, including the actors, the composer, and the director himself. All of the internet battling was manufactured, just as all the hype to see this film was manufactured too. Does Christopher Nolan have a very large and very normie-driven fan base? Yes. I would not discredit that, but just as Stranger Things was a phenomenon on the streaming medium, and whereas Palworld is a phenomenon in video gaming, so too is The Odyssey a phenomenon in theatrical movies. For over a whole year, you were able to pre-order tickets to certain theaters. To this very moment, every theater within 50 miles of me has sold out IMAX showings for every showing, including workdays. Why? Well, because Nolan and the Hollywood marketing apparatus at large have been marketing this film as being the next big epic that must be seen a specific way at a specific price point. When we look at the tickets being sold and the money being made, the majority of that is IMAX ticket sales. You can walk up at any showing right now and see The Odyssey at any PLA showing, and you'll be able to get ideal seats with no problem. IMAX, while being sold out, also costs $8 to $12 more per ticket, even if it's not the 70mm theaters. All of the success in weekend 2 and probably weekend 3, maybe weekend 4 and onward, is being carried by IMAX tickets, many of which could have been pre-ordered for this culturally invented spectacle for nearly a year. Now, why does all this matter? Like, okay, people are seeing this movie, lots of people like it, some people don't. How does this have anything to do with hypocrisy? Hollywood and the powers that be, and I can't say if Nolan is one of those people or not, but it doesn't really matter. Hollywood at large wants this movie to be a colossal hit. Hollywood wants this to be the highest grossing film of the year. It was slated to be a billion-dollar success when they invented it, but they wanted to also sweep every possible award because it plays into a particular narrative that gives them more control. You know, Hollywood tells you that representation matters. Hollywood tells you that authenticity matters too. Being seen as an individual in one's culture matters, and Hollywood has built institutional machinery to prove that. You have actual departments, actual consultants, and actual money in play. In order to qualify for awards now, you must meet certain criteria in demonstrating representation and cultural authenticity. But let's actually define representation, which in the film industry means 3 separate things that people are constantly smashing together. Firstly, there is who is on screen. Then there's who's behind the camera, the directors and writers and department heads. And then there's the third one, the one that matters most for our discussion today, which is Cultural specificity. This is the idea that if you're telling a story that belongs to a particular people, somebody from that people should be in the room with authority while you make it. And that's not meant to be like a courtesy thing. They specifically want an authority figure on location making sure what is being produced is culturally authentic. And there's that word, authenticity. There it is, and it'll come up a few more times too. And there are 3 arguments as to why Hollywood has been making these correction or overcorrection efforts. The first is the mirror argument. Hollywood believes that it's important for kids to see themselves and people who look like them on the big screen, and the small screen too. The idea here is that if a non-white child only ever sees white people in movies and television, then that means whatever the viewing child's race is might be perceived as inferior to the child in question. I swear that is what they think. That is truly how they describe this. The second argument is the accuracy argument, and there might be some credence to this claim. An insider catches something an outsider can't. Somebody who grew up in a particular culture knows what a people of said culture would and wouldn't do. Denzel Washington gave a great assessment of this, comparing Martin Scorsese and Steven Spielberg, stating that Scorsese probably could have made a good Schindler's List, and Spielberg probably could have made a good Goodfellas, but each of those directors comes from a particular culture that allowed them to make the individual films great because they were informed about the culture being portrayed. See, there is credence to an idea like that. The third argument is money. Hollywood believes that, and this is based on UCLA diversity reports, that movies that have 40 to 50% of their cast as people of color gross the highest median global box office. Of course, this doesn't take into account what those productions actually are or the circumstances surrounding them. It just makes generalizations. And so, because these arguments and the motivations behind them, the whole industry shifted to representation on screen first. It is a priority. Backing this, the Oscars Academy put representation into the Best Picture eligibility rules starting back in 2024, which means that to win awards, you must now demonstrate representation in all 3 key positions we stated earlier to qualify to win an Oscar. Okay, so now that we've covered representation, hold that up to Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. The Access media is peacocking that this movie is a triumphant cultural success and that it displays the virtues of all this representation ideology we just defined, but it doesn't. The Odyssey is a story by Greeks from Greece, set in Greece, written in Greek, featuring Greek mythology about Greek people. It is perhaps one of the oldest surviving pieces of Western storytelling that anybody actually reads. If cultural specificity means anything at all, if the insider catches what the outsider misses argument is worth the copious amounts of dollars Hollywood spends on it, then the foundational Greek epic is the single easiest case anyone can and will ever get handed. And yet with all of that, here we find Matt Damon plays Odysseus. He's American. Tom Holland plays Telemachus. He's English. Anne Hathaway plays Penelope, American again. Zendaya plays Athena, American. Elliot Page plays Sinan, Canadian. Lupita Nyong'o, Kenyan and Mexican. Robert Pattinson, English. Charlize Theron, South African. John Leguizamo, Colombian American. Hamish Patel, English. Mia Goth, Benny Safdie, Travis Scott. The list goes on there. This might be a genuinely international casting, but it is not a cast featuring Hollywood-defined representation. So what happened? The same Hollywood that tells us culturally specific stories must inhabit people of those cultures doesn't have any faces representative of the Greek culture. Matt Damon is not Greek, just as Lupita Nyong'o is not Greek. In fact, by my research, there is only a single Greek actor from Greece in the movie. His name, and I'm gonna butcher this because I am terrible with names, Yannis Kokaios-Menos, and he is playing Old Man at Coastal Village. Do the Greek people feel seen with a no-named extra? And so, on Nolan's Odyssey, we see no cultural consultant, no cultural trust, and nobody with any authority in that room who has grown up in Greek culture. This is hypocrisy. Say one thing, do something different. And it's less about Nolan himself or the Odyssey movie itself. It's not about those things. It is about Hollywood, who has made it a corporatized mission to regulate cultural representation in entertainment. Not just movies, but video games, television, and books too. This is an entire industry inside the entertainment industry. And here we find the Golden Goose, the movie that the entire entertainment industry at large has been promoting and elevating for over a year, and telling us that it inhabits all the major cultural values of the Hollywood machine. So, what is the truth? And perhaps more importantly, is Hollywood racist? Hollywood built an entire ecosystem that can only see people through the lens of race. It sorts people by their skin color and the place they were raised on the map. If the Odyssey is a crowning achievement for Hollywood ideology, as is being propagated across the internet, then that means their arguments for having real representation that we just defined don't actually matter. It's a smokescreen. If the Odyssey is the gold standard, then that means it matters more that there is someone who is visually black on screen rather than actually being culturally authentic. It matters more that a queer transgender individual appears on screen, or a Colombian American, or a white American at all is given screen time over that of a culturally specific individual. They made Helen of Troy black. Okay, why not cast a black Greek? Sinon is played by a transgender actor. Okay, well, what about a trans Greek actor? They exist, I think. Matt Damon's Odysseus didn't need to be Matt Damon at all, did it? Remember the three arguments of representation. The Odyssey does not satisfy the mirror argument or the accuracy arguments at all, instead proving Hollywood doesn't actually care about cultural representation. They wanted a PTSD-stricken apologetic white guy, a girl boss white woman, a black person, a trans person, a Latino person, and a few more white people, and that's good enough. That qualifies for awards. That's what they consider inclusive. And let's not forget that the people checking the boxes of inclusivity are in this movie for about 5 minutes apiece. Lupita Nyong'o was in the marketing as if she were going to have a lead role, and she's barely in this 3-hour feature. And all of that takes us to a point where we realize the entire representation machine is actually a racist, pandering lie. Now, the Odyssey is a myth. Myths don't have rules, do they? As many people may come to the defense of Nolan's Odyssey with. The Greeks themselves rewrote their own gods every couple hundred years or so why does it matter that we get it right when they didn't? Well, we might be able to agree with that if, again, the marketing machine hadn't made specific points about this movie reaching for historical authenticity as a justification for creative decisions. There are 3 specific times that historical authenticity is evoked as a means of motivation backing the film. And that's just 3 that I decided to talk about. There is plenty of more evidence to this across the internet. The first one is with the score. Ludwig Göransson told Time in May of 2026 that Nolan wanted no orchestra because, quote, "It's not like the orchestra existed back then," which is why Göransson used gongs, aulos, and lyres to score this movie as a means of matching the Bronze Age instruments of the time. A little note here, right? Göransson claims to be following the instructions of Christopher Nolan. Okay, I think it's important we remember that. The second note is with Nolan himself, speaking to Time as well, and in defense of the armor choices in the movie. Quote, "There are Mycenaean daggers that are blackened bronze. The theory is that they probably could have blackened bronze in those days. You take bronze, you add more gold and silver to it, and then you use sulfur." This explanation was to respond to complaints people had online about historical authenticity. The third, back to Nolan once again, claiming he cast Travis Scott as a means of honoring Homer the poet, that rap music is a form of oral poetry, and that the Odyssey, originally being a poem, is analogous to what we find in rap music today. Overall, Nolan has spoken very highly about the level of research that went into the production of this film, quote, from all departments. That the boats, the armor, the clothing, the set designs, all of it, everything, was informed by trying to be historically authentic to the time. Okay, well, that orchestra-free score runs those gongs through electronics and synthesizers that didn't exist either back then. Odysseus sails a Norse longship, that's the wrong civilization by about 2,000 years. Agamemnon's helmet looks like it came off of Darth Vader's private collection. The rest of the cast's armor isn't from the wrong period, it's from no period. It's the Hollywood Corinthian helmet you've seen in every sword movie since the 60s, opened up in the front so that you could see the actor's face because we need to make sure they get screen time. Odysseus and his men, and Telemachus, wear pants, and Greeks did not wear pants. Yeah, apparently ancient Greeks thought pants were what barbarians wore. I had to look that one up. That one was kind of funny. There are no boar's tusks helmet, and Homer describes one in the Iliad, Book 10, and it happens to be the only object in either epic that archaeologists actually dug up and put in museums. Like, those are real things. There's a guy in Spurs 800 years before Spurs show up in Greece. At one point, Odysseus says the words, "Our age of bronze is collapsing." And the Bronze Age is a term some Danish guy invented in the 1930s. And lastly, as far as my list goes here, I know plenty of other people online have much longer lists. Too many characters say dad and daddy, which are titles nobody in that time period would have used to address their fathers. It's very jarring. But hang on, I want to zoom out here for a moment and say again, this video is not to judge or review the film in and of itself. What I'm speaking to here is a hypocrisy through marketing and hubris. The marketing surrounding this film told you it would be historically authentic, which also plays back into what we said in part 1, because that includes representation. If you're going to peacock and claim that this movie is historically authentic, and then talk about how the score was designed historically and that all departments were working with the prerogative of being historically accurate, but then you ship a movie that has a laundry list of inconsistencies, then these people promoting the film are either lying to you or they don't know what they're talking about. And so all of this leads to obvious conclusions. Hollywood claims that representation matters, then engages in practices that dismiss representation. Hollywood claims that authenticity matters, then engages in making inaccurate conclusions through a claim of speculative territory. Why? Well, because the standard was never the point. Having standards of representation and authenticity is an instrument. It is a means to an end. Hollywood does not actually believe or stand upon real values. Their values will blow with the wind, as we've just shown. It's all about control, and more so, it's about controlling the narrative. When the trailers dropped and people complained about the historical accuracy of the armor, Nolan's answer was archaeology. Mycenaean daggers, blackened bronze, add gold and silver, use sulfur. That's what he said. He's arguing that the historical report supports him in this case. And just to cover all bases, he gives a secondary explanation, stating that the archaeological record is, quote, very fragmentary, and what we think we know is, quote, informed and intelligent speculation, but it is speculation. Those are also Nolan's words, and those are opposite arguments. The first one says the evidence backs choices made. The second one says there is no evidence and therefore no choice can be wrong. He used the record when it helped and dissolved the record when it didn't, about the same armor in the same press cycle for the same movie. Hollywood products were never movies. Movies are a delivery mechanism. What Hollywood actually sells to you is meaning. They sell you what a story is about, what it says about you, and whether you're the kind of person who can understand it. That is the business. That has always been the business. And if meaning is the real product, then the most valuable thing you can own isn't a franchise. It's the right to decide what counts as a legitimate objection. Because think about what that gets you. If you control what criticisms are real criticisms, you cannot lose an argument. And that's not because you win, but rather there is no argument to be had. You control the narrative. Now follow that one step further, because this is where it goes. If you own what a story means, and you own which objections to it are allowed, then eventually you just own the story itself. And that does not include legal rights per se, but the identity of a story, the impact of a story, what the history of the story means, well, all of that belongs to the steward who controls the reins of that story today. And that brings us to a conclusion that we talk about quite frequently on this channel because it's that important. The thing where adaptation stops being adaptation and turns into replacement. Christopher Nolan's Odyssey is a fantastic example of this theory, where the new version doesn't sit next to the source, it stands on top of it. And in 5 years, the thing everybody means when they say the title, The Odyssey, or insert title here because this works with quite a few things, well, everyone will think of that IMAX movie they waited weeks to see because the theaters were all sold out. That's The Odyssey. Well, this is that, at the largest scale it has ever been attempted, on top of one of the oldest stories we have. My friends, people are walking out of the Odyssey film uninformed about what the original story was because they're not reading it anymore themselves, and they're thinking they have a true grasp on what the Odyssey was and is. Nolan publicly credited Emily Wilson's 2017 translation as an inspiration for this film. Her book went top 5 on Amazon off the back of this movie. She has every commercial reason on earth to love it. And yet she told the Associated Press on July 19th, 2026, quote, "I want to celebrate the fact that so many more people are aware of the Odyssey. But at the same time, I had the sense that Christopher Nolan was trying to pack everything in while missing themes that were essential to the poem." But she then listed her grievances, pointing out Zeus doesn't appear in the film. Poseidon doesn't appear in the film. Poseidon is the antagonist of the Odyssey. The entire 10-year delay, like the whole reason there is a story, is because Poseidon holds a grudge over the incident with the Cyclops. Poseidon is not in this movie. None of the gods are, actually. She commented on how the anti-war messaging is incoherent, and she also said Penelope got thinned out far enough that it endangered, quote, any possibility of believing in this marriage. Which is a very good point. Anne Hathaway is not believable in this role as the wife of Odysseus, nor the mother of Tom Holland. Then we've got Daniel Mendelsohn, who published his own Odyssey translation in 2025. He wrote his assessment on July 17th, 2026. Quote, "In this Odyssey, there is no cleverness, no humor, no wily charm. In this Odyssey, the hero doesn't trick the Cyclops with his brilliant nobody pun. He and his men just poke the giant's eye out and make a gridiron-inspired run for it." Later, he says Nolan has merely remade Homer's heroes in his own image, just as he has imposed on Odysseus' adventures values utterly foreign to Homer. Thirdly, we look at Gareth Hines, who commented similarly. Hines adapted the Odyssey as a graphic novel. He posed the same question I have been posing across this channel all year. How much can you change a story's main character before the story itself is changed entirely? Right now, today, there are millions of people who spent 3 hours in a theater and came out believing they have a working understanding of the Odyssey. And they don't. They have a working understanding of a Christopher Nolan film. They know an Odysseus who is honorable and haunted and guilt-stricken through the lens of 2026 modern-day therapy-based sensibilities. Odysseus, as a warrior and as a king in ancient human civilization, would not have been guilt-stricken, not like that at least. Which means that audiences do not know the Odysseus that Homer wrote, the one who lies constantly, who brags, who gets his own men killed, who orders 12 women hanged in his own courtyard when he gets home. These viewers think Sinon, Elliot Page's character, was written by Homer. Sinon is not in the Odyssey. He's from Virgil's Aeneid. a Roman poem written about 7 centuries later in a different language by a different civilization for a different empire's purposes. Nolan imported him and expanded that role. Elliot Page addressed this, stating the character I play is actually not originally in the Odyssey, but millions of people today will believe that Sinon is. You see, the issue has nothing really to do with Elliot Page as a person, or who they are, or their performance at all. There is now a false character injected into this story that audiences believe was always there. Wizard, the original poem is still there for people to read. This isn't a big deal. Calm down. Yeah? And most of them will never read the poem. Audiences today don't read. Daily reading in the US has plummeted by 40% over the last 2 decades, with only 16% of adults reading daily in 2023. If we look at what they're reading, those stats splinter and get even worse. So now, not only are they not reading, let's say they do for a moment. Which adaptation are they picking up? A moment ago, I named 3 people who adapted the poem. Each one of those adaptations is going to have something different. Each one of those translations is going to have something inside it that changes the way Homer originally wrote it. Nolan's film just happens to be the furthest from the source material, but this adaptation issue has been happening for centuries. Happens to the Bible too. Happens to every book, especially when changing languages. Look at the 10 Commandments. Some Bibles have Commandment 6 as thou shalt not kill, and some say thou shalt not murder. There is a world of difference between killing and murdering. So because people aren't reading anymore, they're not informed. And because they're not informed, they're not able nor capable of challenging narratives. And without challenging the narratives, we resort to exactly what I said before. The victors write the history. They can change the meaning of every story, of every character, of every culture, claim that it is serving said culture, but all of that is only ever superficially surface level. And in the end, Homer, the Greek poet, is no different than Homer Simpson. History no longer means anything because there is no one left preserving it. In the past, adapting stories was a mechanism in which to tell stories to audiences who couldn't access or couldn't understand the importance of the story. Perhaps it was translating languages or translating mediums. In the past, that was all done in honor of the work. The translator was bringing the work to people who've never experienced it before and wanted them to have the same emotional impacts that they had had. Today, there is no such faithful adaptation. There is only replacement. Nolan's Odyssey has replaced Homer's Odyssey for this generation. All of Nolan's modern-day beliefs have superseded Homer's. And it would be one thing if this was just one movie or one story or one time, but this is all of storytelling. It's not just movies or games or books. Everything everywhere today is being replaced. We see it in Halo on the Xbox, injecting new characters who are there to undermine the protagonist. We see it in Gears of War, too, coming later this year. We see it in Star Wars and superheroes and books, too. Here's a good question. How many book adaptations have been written with the design to tell the same story from the perspective of the villain as a means of validating their beliefs and actions? Hundreds? Thousands, maybe? Bad is good and good is bad. The battle for culture is not actually about representation or authenticity or, oh my gosh, a girl superhero. All of that is surface level. It's polarizing, and it's meant to be polarizing. It is meant to divide you. It is meant to divide all of humankind. The real conflict is not just Nolan's Odyssey or Mindy Kaling's Velma, right? Deeper than that. The real fight is over what it means to be human, what our actual belief structure is, how we treat each other, what virtue actually means, what our history was, and what it means. History is a story, and as we discussed earlier, to change the meaning of a story is to change how people perceive storytelling. Instead of being a cunning, charming trickster punished by Poseidon and having dealt with many other gods, to today's generation of people, Odysseus is a PTSD-ridden, guilt-stricken white man with an honor complex that appears when most convenient for the movie to keep going. Those are 2 very different men. but Hollywood is unblinkingly telling you that they are the same. Until next time, create, innovate, inspire others to do so as well, and cancel Disney Plus.